evening, everyone. Thank you all so much for coming out this evening. I really appreciate your attendance. If you all don't know, I'm Natisha Harbison, and I'm currently serving as the Assistant Financial Secretary. So I'm 1/4 of the finance team. So I'll be the one doing the presenting for tonight. But of course, this is training, but also open discussion. So if you have questions as I go through the slides, please don't hesitate to stop me and ask. All right, so we'll go ahead and move right along. All right, so the purpose of this meeting. So the first thing is we just want to provide a little bit of insight on our church financial processes as they pertain to the ministries that you all are involved in. Then we'll review the monthly ministry report template. So you all should have received probably about 2 different reports from me so far, one in April and one in May, just so you can kind of see how those templates are made, what goes into making them, and how we come up with those numbers so you all can understand how we do that on the finance team. And then we'll go over the quarterly report template. Mostly the focus will be on the financial portion of that, which is where we're involved for the ministries. And then we'll talk about how those 2 reports connect in terms of the data and how you can use that information that we provide on those monthly reports to complete your quarterly conference report, and also where we place that information within the quarterly conference booklet. All right. All right, so our current process. So right now, funds that you all receive for your ministries are brought in through our Sunday services or special services that we may have here at church in person, also through online donations through Vanco or our text to give option. And then also we do receive physical donations, so folks still mail in donations sometimes or drop them off at the church. So that's usually how we receive the funds. And then funds are expended through you all when you all request expenditures through the expense vouchers by the ministry or individual requesters, through church credit card purchases, and then also through internal transfers between ministries. And then, so that information, both for the income and the expenses, are logged by the church office and the finance team. So it's logged by name if that information is provided when the donation is given in our personnel database that's utilized by the church office for donations. And that's what you all get when you get your end of the year financial statements. That's where that information is held. And then it's also logged by ministry or by purpose in the church's accounting database by the church treasurers for both donations and expenses. Any questions so far? Okay, so the ministry reports. So the monthly reports are provided after we've all gone through the information on the finance team. So as I just mentioned, we have all those multiple ways that we're receiving money throughout the month. So we get the monthly reports at the end of the month for the online donations, and then we go through and make sure that all of the information for all the checks that have cleared the bank and everything that's involved with the finances for the month, we go through that. And we go line by line through all of the information, and we go through and we make changes if things were incorrect or numbers were typed in incorrectly, and we reconcile things with the bank if there were corrections after the deposits were turned in. So there's a lot that occurs throughout the month and at the end of the month to make sure that those numbers are as accurate as we know them to be. So with that being said, when the month ends, we go through the data, and so it takes a while to go through the data because we have to go through the credit card statements as well, make sure that those expenditures are allocated. So once all that's done, that's when we send out the report to you all. So that means it's going to be, slightly behind on the information by the time you get it, because if the month ends on the 31st, it's going to take us at least a week or so to go through the information. So for example, for this month for May, you'll probably be receiving the reports within the next week or 2 once we finish going through all the information. So that'll be for the May report. So even though you're getting the report in June, that doesn't mean that's your balance that day you receive it. It's just at the end of the prior month if that makes sense. Everybody understand that? Okay. And then also there are times when we aim to make it the end of the month, so we hope that, if the month ends on the 31st, the data will be from the 1st to the 31st, but sometimes when we have quarterly conferences, the due dates for the reports are a little earlier than the end of the month, so sometimes we have to just set a cutoff date so that the data is clean by one date, and then that's the date that the information is valid through. And then with the next quarterly conference report, we'll catch up and catch whatever few days were missed at the end of the month. So I think that only happened one time last year where we had, well actually that was this year, but within the last conference year, I think in January, we had to set a cutoff date because of when the quarterly conference reports were due. Okay, and then so the accounting database that we use, it summarizes the donations that we receive by category. So all donations that you receive for, let's say for example, for Women's Missionary Society, it all goes under Women's Missionary Society in our side, right? So if, on the 1st, the 2nd, and the 3rd Sunday, you receive $100 each, in our system, at the end of the month, we're going to see $300 total, right? So that's how much you all made as the Missionary Society in that month. In terms of going down to the certain level of detail of whether it was for dues or whether it was for Thanksgiving baskets or things like that, we don't really have that level of detail or information unless it's written on the check when it's provided or all of that detail is provided. So if we don't have it, we can't really tell you what it is unless the person that donated gave us that level of detail. Does that make sense? Okay. So I just want you all to be aware of that. Sometimes when we get the, random requests for, what's our balance on this or things like that, we can only give you, the information that we have. Okay, and then, so the other thing is we also may not always be able to provide that information. So obviously, when members donate online, they often do select the appropriate category in which they want the funds to go to and things of that nature. So it's stored there, but we're not able to just freely give that information out to you all, right? Because that's still that person's personal financial data. So you also have to keep that in mind too. If they give permission for us to run that report and provide you that information, we can, but otherwise we can only give the summary of what was donated in that month. And then also, along those lines, we aren't necessarily able to break all the ministry categories up. So if you have like 20 lines in your budget for this year, we may not be able to store all 20 different categories in QuickBooks, right? Because we are limited to the number of categories we can have in there. So that's why with so many ministries, we at least have one main category for each ministry, so you can see all the income, see all the expenses. But if we were to break it down for every single ministry, every single category, we wouldn't have enough for all the main things that we need. So just want you all to be aware of that. So that being said, it's best that you all utilize your treasurers within your ministries to keep track of, when members give dues or things like that, if you want a specialized, detailed report on what you all are bringing in by person. So if you wanted to ask us, hey, did so-and-so pay for their dues this month? We can't really tell you that, right? So we're just big picture, how much did you bring in and how much did you spend? So, yes, sir.
Yes, like with the Sons of Ireland, it's just a breakfast, and the people just drop in a couple of dollars on a plate. And what I've been doing is I've just been logging the total dollars. I haven't been going person by person because I don't know if they're passing a plate around or if it's on a table. So I just put it down how much we took in for that Sunday, and I put it in the one of the church envelopes, and I put it in the offering basket like that. And then I guess it gets logged into the Sons of Ireland.
Yes, sir.
So do I just continue that, or do I need to go down and say who's putting in what?
You don't have to. That's completely up to you all as a ministry. If they want to know who is giving what, then someone would have to keep an internal track of that. But what you're doing right now from our standpoint is fine.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir. Any other questions?
Yeah.
Yes.
So if a person puts it in the church envelope and indicate on that church envelope where that money is supposed to go, how is that is that or shown on the report or not?
Yes, when they do the Sunday financial sheet, if they specify, hey, this is for, like, for example, the New York trip, if they say specifically New York trip, then that's what we annotated as in the description when we log it into QuickBooks. But if they just say Praise Dance Ministry, we just put it under general Praise Dance.
So when we see the report, or you send us the report, it should indicate, should I know that, should I see that on the report? That's what I'm asking.
Yes, if they put on there specifically New York trip, we will write that as the description on the donation line, if it's called out on the Sunday financial sheet. Yes, ma'am. Any other questions? Okay. All right, so also with the monthly report, so it is a running a running total of your income and expenses. So as you all saw, when I sent the report out in April, it was from the beginning of the conference year until April. I'm sorry, when I sent it out in March, it was for the beginning of the conference year through March. And then when I sent it again in April, it was for the beginning of the conference year all the way through April. So we're using it as a running total so that you can see what all you brought in and what you spent for that conference year. So right now, the report that we're going to send you all in June will be for May, and then as the months go on, we'll add on all the income and expenses for each month. So it'll grow or decrease depending on what your income and expenses are each month. And so we're doing that so that you all can see everything at once, so that if you need to look back at prior data, if you need to see what was done in the first quarter or the second quarter, you'll still have that reference there, and it's all in one spreadsheet. Yes, ma'am.
So does everybody have a starting balance in May that was the ending balance in April?
Yes, yes. And so that's what we're using so that you can see what your starting balance was for the beginning of the conference year. And then we'll also make sure that we're adding in the income and expenses, and it'll reflect in the ending balance column of the spreadsheet where you are at the time the report ends. Yes, sir?
I haven't received anything since I've been treasurer for Sons of Valley. How do I get those sheets?
I can get your email from you
Okay,
if you put it on the spread. Yes, sir.
Okay,
Yep.
thank you.
So I'll have your information. So I went based off what we had at the time. That's what I was using to send it out. But as I was sending them out, I was letting them know if there's somebody missing, please let me know, and I can make sure I add them. But I'll make sure that you get added for the ministry that you have.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir. I think that's it.
So I'm just pulpit ministry. We get a lot of donations, like every Sunday. How do we get an accurate total of how much is actually in the treasury? Because it's hard to keep up with it when we don't know. But you're going to give me a report for the quarter.
For the month.
Well, for the month. But it's going to be after how many Sundays?
It'll probably be after about 2 Sundays.
Okay, so what I'm saying is, how do we actually get an accurate report of how much we have in the treasury?
So that's our way of making sure that you have the latest information. So obviously it takes time to produce the report, so we can't always produce it right then and there if the information isn't logged in.
So basically, we're not going to have exactly what we have in our treasury.
Right, it's just going to be as of the date of the report.
Okay, because with people putting donations in, we don't know.
Right, so it just depends on when the information gets logged in the system.
And that's, well, what she's saying, though, the organizational treasurers have access to the financial sheets too. So access a cross-check,
Right.
not just you guys giving them, they should be, the treasurers should actually be doing something, and you two should come together and come to terms with having the same thing. So it's not, you should be getting financial sheets, or organizational treasurers should be getting Sunday every Sunday. And
I didn't
online.
know they were getting those.
No,
Don't they get-
As far as I know, they're not sent to treasurers, they're put in Dropbox.
Well, put it, access to them, access to them.
Right, not everybody has access to Dropbox either, they can get it if they request it. But if you want to see the financial sheet from every Sunday and go through that, then you're welcome to do that.
And if you have a report and your report is different than what you receive from finance, then we need to meet and then do a reconciliation to see what the differences are.
Right. Yeah, I was going to get to that point too, but in reference to sending out the financial sheets.
I'm saying sending, I mean, they're
They're in
available, I mean,
Dropbox.
they're in Dropbox.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's managed by the church office, so if they
And
want
they,
access
and they
to
should
that.
have access to that.
Okay. Any
You get
other,
access to that.
we contact the church office?
Before it was Sister Gail, so I guess it would be Lisa until,
Well, I can give them access to Dropbox.
there you go.
Yeah, they can
Contact
actually
us.
get access to the,
Say again?
we can get access to the.
Dropbox.
To the financial sheet.
It's a cloud, it's an online way to get to that information.
Okay, go through the church webpage.
Say again?
Go through the church webpage.
Yeah.
No, I'll get you, I'll do
Okay,
that.
if you send me the link, then.
Yeah, they'll do that.
Thank you.
But you still wouldn't get the online.
Right,
The online is once a month, at the end of
Right.
the month. And for organizational leaders to have, or cease, not cease it, well, yeah, maybe on the Dropbox, same thing, Dropbox.
any other questions? Okay. All right, so, the reason why you all are getting the spreadsheets is because each ministry does not have a bank account, right? So we only have the bank accounts that we have for the church. So we're not able to, as you mentioned, get a right now balance every day because you don't have a bank account. So the way we do that is to pull the information from QuickBooks based on your income and expenses, and then we use the quarterly report balances to track what your balances are as you go along based on your income and expenses. So that's why you all are receiving the spreadsheets. And so it's still a work in progress. So, you know, if you all have comments as you review it and things don't make sense, certainly let us know. But we're trying to work towards getting a good product so that you all can understand your ministry finances. So at this time, the reports are being mailed to the ministry president or the organization leader, the vice president or any assisting leaders, the treasurer, and the quarterly conference report prepare if that's different from any of the above listed 3 people. So if, you know, as Brother Downey mentioned, if you haven't been receiving those reports and you fall into one of those categories, please make sure that you give us your email before you leave, and we'll make sure that you start receiving those. And as we mentioned, as Sister Townsend mentioned, please review these reports promptly when you get them so that we can make sure that we reconcile any discrepancy that you all have on your records versus what we have, because we're all humans. Sometimes errors happen, numbers get changed by us. We've seen errors by the bank as well, so it happens. But if you all let us know, we'll make sure that we make those changes and adjustments that need to be made. But it's important that you go through the report line by line for all of your income, all of your expenses, to make sure everything is as accurate as you know it to be. And then the biggest thing is, especially in the month that ends the quarter where we have to prepare quarterly reports, we want to make sure that you do that pretty quickly so that we can get you all the correct information to complete your quarterly reports, in addition to what we have to provide for the quarterly reports as well. Okay? All right, so if ministry comments, as I said, aren't received by the date of the reports, in the issue that there is a discrepancy, say, you know, the report is due, you know, by the 10th of the month, we ask that you try to get any comments that you have to us by, you know, within the 5th to 8th window, so that we have enough time to make those changes and get it turned in to the church office. But in the event that we can't come to an agreement, or there's still further research that's needed, we'll go with whatever number we can agree upon at the time, because we still have to meet the suspense for the elder. And then we'll make sure that those changes are made in the next quarterly conference report to catch you up to fix your balance. So, you know, we have deadlines, we have to meet them, unfortunately, but we will make sure that any changes that need to be made are made. Now, that will, if it's something that's in that past data, it will impact whatever data that was in the report that we previously sent you. So if you had used that to send out to your ministry team or things like that, just be aware that those changes would be coming in the next quarter. Just be aware of that. All right. So now we're going to get into the detail of the reports itself. So when you all received the report, it was on a large spreadsheet. I put in the email itself, you know, hey, this is X ministry and this is the report based on, you know, May 1st to whatever date, so you know the actual date the data corresponds to, so that, you know, if I say the date is from May 1st to the 31st, and you're asking me, hey, you know, is this my balance as of 5 June? Well, no, it won't be your balance as of 5 June because the report is from May 1st to the 31st. So just be aware that the report date is in the email itself, and it's also in the spreadsheet, so that you can know when the date the information was pulled, so that you know that balance is current as of that report end date. All right, so we'll just kind of go category by category on this spreadsheet. So the first section is the conference year, so pretty self-explanatory, but that is the conference year for which the data is associated. So all of this information that I'm going over right now is going to be for last year, so I'm just going through this as an example. So this was for 2023 through 2024, and this is the conference year for when we ran the report in QuickBooks. They'll always be based on the current conference year if we're doing it in the current conference year, with the exception of the last quarter of the year, because we're doing the quarterly report for the new conference year. So just be mindful of that. If you're going to be comparing reports from one month to another, make sure that you're looking at the same conference year. And then ensure that any comments or questions that you have are in alignment with that conference year report, versus if you want to know something about the new conference year we're already in. So just keep that in mind. All right, organization. So here, the organization name that the report is for will be listed. So I know that several of you are a part of multiple organizations, so just make sure that you're looking at that organization when you're looking at balances, to make sure that you're talking about the right one. But again, as I mentioned, there can be errors. There's almost 40 ministries in the church, so we're trying to push out all of these reports, so sometimes we can make a mistake. So if I did, or someone made a mistake, please just let us know and we'll make the correction. All right, report end date. So I just talked about that. So that's just the date in which we pulled the report from QuickBooks to look at your income and expenses and determine what your balance was as of that date. So the income, so this this cell will show your QuickBooks income. So that's basically the total of the income on the report. So when you look at the full report, you'll see a section for income and you'll see another section for expenses. So down at the bottom of the income section, it'll reflect total income. So that number for the total within the report should match the QuickBooks income total there. And that's what that arrow is indicating. And then similarly with the QuickBooks expenses, at the end of the report, you'll see a total for expenses number, and that should match what the QuickBooks expenses cell is. So if it doesn't align, of course, please let us know. And then the net for the period, we did get several questions about this. So this is just as of the period of the report, right? So sometimes this number can be negative or it can be positive. It'll be positive if your ministry brought in more money than it spent. It'll be negative if you spent more money than the ministry received just within that period. It doesn't mean that that's your balance, that's just what your net was for that particular period of the report. Any questions on that? Okay, and then conference year. Just want to make sure that everyone is aware, because we did have some questions about that. So we have 4 quarters in the conference year, right? Our quarterly report, however, starts, this conference year report is for the first quarter, but it's for the last quarter data from the previous conference year. So you have to keep that in mind when you're looking at the data and building your report. So the report that was due recently in May was for February, March, and April, but it's the first quarter of the conference year, this conference year. So that being said, quarter 2, obviously May, June, July, quarter 3, August, September, October, and quarter 4 is November, December, and January. But in terms of your ministry finances when we're sending out these reports and you're trying to see your whole conference year balance, keep in mind that you're not going to see the information for May until the second quarterly report. Does that make sense?
I have a question.
Yes.
It's not about this. Before, when you were talking, you said that the net that we would get in that column would not necessarily be what we actually have in our treasury.
Correct.
It would just be for that 1 month,
Well, for the period of the report.
or
like
whatever period that report
Right.
is.
Yes, ma'am.
All right,
Yes,
okay.
ma'am.
So no matter how much you had in your treasury prior to that period, this is just gonna cover that period.
Correct.
The
It's
net.
just telling you the net between what you brought in and what you spent.
Over a specific period.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you, Benjamin.
Yes, ma'am. All right. Any questions on the conference year and the timelines? No? Okay. All right, so moving on to the next set. So first quarter report balance. So as I stated, this is what we use to start the quarterly report balance and to reconcile where all the ministries were at the time. So this is where the balance at the end of the previous conference year will be reflected in this box. So as I stated, when we send out the monthly reports, it's going to be for the entire conference year, and it'll be a running total of what your balance is, but it's going to be based off whatever your starting balance was at the beginning of the conference year, and we'll continue to adjust based on your income and expenses throughout the year. So, as we stated to several ministries, if for some reason this number did not match what you all were tracking in your ministries, please let us know so we can discuss and reconcile, because we want to make it right and we want to move forward with a number that everyone agrees with. Because moving forward, we'll be able to know what the numbers are because everyone's keeping track of the income and expenses going forward. But in terms of what the starting balance is, we have to make sure that we're all on the same page. Yes, ma'am?
Okay, so I got a question. You keep saying let us know. Who is the us?
The finance team.
Right, but so we can contact anybody on the finance team?
Yes,
How
ma'am.
does that work?
And you can just respond to the email when we send out the report.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
So in trying to keep track of what's coming into our ministries, if things are being paid online,
Mm-hmm.
how do we know that they're being paid online or who pays? Because somebody could pay it online and not tell us. So how would we know that that's been paid? You know, how would we keep track of that?
That's what we're sending out these monthly reports for. So it'll show all the income that you receive from online donations within that month.
And the names will be on there or not?
No, it'll only be a summary for the online donations because the report just shows the total that you receive for that section. So we don't go through and put name by name because that'll overload the system if we had an entry for every single name. Yes.
Dwight gets a report monthly from Vanco, who donated for
Yes.
what? So I think if you look at the report that he has, which is in Dropbox, you can get that information. Is that right,
But
Dwight?
what he publishes in Dropbox doesn't list everyone's name. So as I was saying earlier, that's still that member's personal information. So we don't list everything that every individual gave. Now, I know for the special offerings, he does list it by name for that. But in terms of for every single donation that every person has made, that's not shown on that report that's listed in Dropbox for the protection of the member, in case they may not want you to know that they made an anonymous donation. But
Well,
I mean,
obviously, if they say it's anonymous, you don't.
right.
Right, okay. All right, thank you.
Any other questions?
I guess if the person's, I mean, because sometimes, you know, Sister Valerie, you kind of need to know who they have given. The only other way to get it is maybe through the church financial clerk. I mean, somebody help her with getting with that, because sometimes they need to know who gave
Just
a
tell us
particular thing.
what you think.
With Dropbox, with online giving, if when members give, that's with the church office. They record that information on members.
Yes, they're recorded by name,
So
but are we
But then
giving that
too-
out is what I'm asking.
I guess my thing is, is there a way for when people give donations, can they notify you themselves? Because there's an issue with people's personal information and giving out their information of what they gave. From our standpoint, we shouldn't be giving out their personal information. So say for instance, I donated money for your ministry. Is there a problem with that person saying to you, I donated money to your ministry, and then you'll see when the money comes in on your report?
Okay,
Or-
for donations, I'm fine. If it
Okay.
just says a donation, I'm not. The question I have is like with this trip,
Mhm.
somebody can say to me, I made an online gift of $300. I mean, not gift, but a payment of $300.
Mhm.
But, and because you take that fee out, I can't rectify the $300 because there's no name on the sheet. You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
In her particular case, and now for Sundays, Valerie, for every time there's a donation for example, New York trip, that's a separate line item on the financial sheet. So you'll know who that is. For online donations, there's no category for New York trip, so that's a special donation, special offering. So every name and every amount is shown on that online donation or the end of the month report for online donations, so you can know that.
So it'll say praise dance.
It'll say praise dance, New York trip, whatever, because there's no category especially for that.
So, okay, so how do I get that report?
That's on Dropbox. You
That's
should be
on
one of the recipients, aren't you? Do you get Dropbox report? None of them?
If I did, I don't know, I
They're
got
not sent out.
No.
I don't think I got
No,
it.
when
No.
you share, they're shared. When you go into share that, the names or email addresses are put in the share of Dropbox. And so I can put your email address in there.
Okay.
But that's how you know that for online. For your because there's not a specific spelled out category for New York trip.
But will that report tell her who gave that money for the New York trip?
Say again?
Will that report tell her who gave the money?
Yes, we categorize as a special donation because they'd have to write that in there for New York trip.
So it'll just say special donation? Or will it say New
No,
York
it will
trip?
say New York trip.
It'll say New York trip. That's how it's categorized. It won't be categorized as other general online donations or by organization.
Okay.
The ones that are sort of listed online. But that one's not listed. So it'll be a special donation. You'll be able to see, and even if it's a credit card, the final amount will be shown, not the original donation. If they use a credit
You
card.
just said, if the names will be there, then you just told me it just said special donation. So,
No, I'm saying the category, all those things that aren't listed will be in special. So your New York trip is a special donation.
it was,
But that's how it's categorized. It'll be there. It'll be there. It's a category. It just says all the things that aren't listed as, tithes and offering and
so it
missions
comes
and all.
under special donation, but it says New York trip. Is
Yes.
that what I'm hearing?
Yes.
Okay, that's what I was confused. I thought it was, okay, so I got that straight. So the money that comes in on Sunday, how do I how do I access that on the Sunday report?
You have to just ask somebody who has online. If you're looking for online again,
No, she's talking about for the Sunday financial sheet.
there's a separate line item put on a financial sheet that says that the
Okay.
person's name and the reason that they're doing it.
Right, so how do I access that?
You should the Dropbox again.
Okay, please
Yeah.
put me in the Dropbox.
Okay.
But just to clarify what he's saying, that assumes that they're selecting special offering when they make the donation. If they put it under Praise Dance Ministry, it's not gonna say their name in that bottom section.
Is praise dance? Do I have praise dances?
Yes.
Okay. Okay.
Yes.
Yes.
So
Praise
if they
dance will be
select-
praise dance.
Right, if they select Praise Dance and they just donate to Praise Dance, we're not gonna know that that's for New York trip. But if they select special offering and then type in New York trip, he'll know to break that out and put that at the bottom of the report.
And that'll have the name.
And it'll have the name.
Okay.
You're talking about online, and you can write in what it's for.
Right, when they select special offering and then they write in what it's for, that's how we're getting New York trip from the online specifically.
So we
But
have to
if,
help people to know that they need to do that if they want to, okay.
yes ma'am.
Also, and Valerie, please, for the New York trip, the name may not be on the financial sheet.
That's what I was,
So you may have to ask someone to go to Servant Keeper to find that information.
going to what now?
Servant Keeper. And I can't do that. It's extreme.
Why wouldn't it be
That's
on,
the
why
church.
wouldn't it be on a financial sheet?
Because on the Sundays when I've been in the finance room, we total all the New York trip and put it as on one line. We haven't been putting individual names.
Okay. We've been doing a separate line item for those donations.
Certain people.
And I don't know who has access to Servant Keeper now that it's Barry's gone.
But Servant Keeper is for people's personal information.
Right.
Nobody should be giving out somebody else's personal information unless they have written consent from that person.
I understand that myself, and I appreciate that, but if Valerie needs to know if John Doe paid $300 for the New York trip, I don't know any other way she's gonna find that out.
She can talk to John Doe. Because even when you give a donation online, you can make a copy of what you donated and have it as a receipt.
Yes, I understand that, but. well,
She's talking Sundays though. She's, in their particular counting day, they didn't make a line item on a financial sheet. They made a total. So there's no way now to go back unless they do go back to the person that did it.
Person.
No, they can, well, she can ask anybody that donated on a
This
Sunday.
is a special case, let's go on, we can continue this later if we need to.
All right. Oh, let me find my notes again. All right. So as I was saying, if you have issues with the balance that was stated as first quarter report balance, which is the starting balance that we use to move forward, please let us know so we can make those adjustments as needed to make sure that it's correct going forward. Did anybody else have questions on the balance part? Okay.
Could you just go through how you get, well, you haven't got to the ending balance yet.
No.
When you get to the ending balance, just how you
Yes.
get there.
Going through. And then for internal transfers income, so as I mentioned, sometimes there are internal transfers between ministries. So for example, one that I can think of was, I think WMS, if I'm not mistaken, made a donation to the Praise Dance ministry. So in that case, that's an internal ministry transfer, right? One is receiving and one is losing. So that wouldn't be reflected like in a bank statement, of course, because it's just an internal transfer. So we track that separately outside of QuickBooks to make sure that we're tracking that in terms of your balance. So if that were to happen within this reporting period, it'll be stated there in that total income. And then in addition to that, we'll keep a running list of all of those transfers that are being made so you can see where that total is coming from. So it'll show the date that they made it. Usually that's from the Sunday financial sheet. We'll put the ministry that is coming from and the ministry that is going to and what the amount was and any special notes that need to be reflected for that. Any questions on that? Okay. And then similarly, with any internal transfer expenses from your ministry to another ministry, that'll also be reflected in that total box. And again, all of that will be summarized in a running list for internal ministry transfers, and you'll be able to see whether it's from you or to you based on what's listed there as the ministry. Any questions on that? Okay. Now, for the ending balance. So, I did a little nice math here so you all can see how the numbers are brought together. But basically, you take the first quarter balance, which is your balance at the start of the conference year. You're going to add up all your sources of income, which is from the QuickBooks income, as well as any internal transfer income you receive. And then you're going to subtract all of your expenses, which is your total QuickBooks expenses, as well as any internal transfer expenses that you were giving to other ministries. And that is how you will get to your ending balance as of that report date. Does that make sense to everyone? Okay. And again, this balance is only as of the report end date that's reflected on the sheet when it's provided to you. So if you're asking, is this my current balance? It won't be your current balance probably as of the date that you're asking for it, but it will be current as of that date. Okay. All right, and then, so this wasn't included on the report that you all have been receiving, but based on the inquiries that we've received, this is what I plan to build into the next set of reports that we send out. That way you can see for each quarter what numbers are being used on the quarterly report for your ministry. So I'll just go section by section with this one. So of course in this column you're going to have which quarterly report it was for. So as I mentioned, to start the conference year amount, so whatever you did in May, June, or July, you won't see that until the Q2 conference year report. So that's why it started at Q2. So as the quarters go on, we'll fill in this information. So it'll show your balance forward at the beginning of the quarter, and then in the next column, it'll show your total additions for the quarter, which is again going to be a summary of your QuickBooks income and your internal transfers income. And then it'll show the subtotal, which is the balance forward plus the additions total column. And then the amount dispersed for the quarter will be the sum of the QuickBooks expenses plus your internal transfers expenses. And then the total will be the subtotal minus that amount dispersed. And I'll go over this in a little bit more detail for the quarterly report portion. But does anyone have questions so far on that? Okay, so just digging a little deep into the ministry reports. Of course, when it's sent out to you all, it's not color-coded like this by quarter. But as I mentioned, because it's going to be a running report, you're going to see all quarterly data in there. So that's just so you can be able to see everything. But you'll be able to look at the dates and know, based on when the quarter ends, where the next quarter transitions to. But as an example, so I can show you all, I highlighted here, excuse me, in the light blue, you can see that was Q1. And then in the second color, you see that's Q2. And then in Q3, I show here as an example, the last transaction for this ministry was on the 16th of January, and that's because when we did the quarterly report, the cutoff date was January 26th. So there was one more transaction that was for the 31st of January that will be rolled into the next quarterly report. Any questions on that? Okay. So similarly, with the expenses portion of the report, it breaks down all the details for your expenses, and I'm just going to quickly highlight what some of this information means and how it relates to you. So the first column is the transaction date, so that's the date either that the income was received or that the payment was made or check was written. The transaction type is usually going to be, a journal entry for online donations. It'll say deposit if you received income. It'll say check if a check was written, or it'll say expense if it was a direct debit from the bank account, which usually isn't the case for ministries since most of your expenses are through vouchers and through a check, but that's what's in that column. And then if there's a number associated with the entry for the journal, or if it's a check, they'll have a check number in that column. And then for the payee, it'll list who the payee was. So whether it's an organization, like if you're paying, your assessment, it'll say, Nora B. Taylor or whatever it is that goes for the WMS or Virginia Conference or things like that. Or if it's an actual individual that was paid, the individual's name will be listed there. And then here in the memo description line, this is what we were talking about. If the information is provided to us, this is where like the person's name will be listed. If it's like New York trip, dash, whatever the person's name will be if they provided it. Or we'll say it's for dues for that ministry, or it was for an assessment or a special event. We'll write in what the name of that special event is, like Father's Day, Mother's Day, or, things like that. So if it's provided to us, that's where that information goes. And then this just is reflecting the bank account. So most of your all's ministries are going to fall under the general fund bank account, but of course for the kitchen ministry, it has its own bank account, as well as the mortgage and building fund. And then what's most important is the transaction amount. That'll be listed in the last column. And then you can ignore for the time being the running balance that's shown there. That's just the default template in QuickBooks. So we're still working through making adjustments to QuickBooks so that it's best suited for us. But when you're copying and pasting a lot of data for a lot of people, you don't have time to tailor every single thing so you can get it out in time. So for the time being, you can ignore that furthest right column. And then in some transactions, you'll notice the word split. That just means that multiple ministries or multiple transactions occurred on one deposit or one expense, and your ministry was one of them. So you can just ignore that. But the details of the transaction and how it impacts your ministry will be listed on that line. Okay? Any questions so far? Good. All right, so now moving on to the quarterly reports. So all ministries are required to submit a report detailing the summary of their activities. So if you haven't seen it before, this is what the quarterly reports look like on the first page. And so you'll have to fill out that information. And then the second part of it is the financial summary. So in the quarterly conference booklets, we provide a financial summary of all the ministries and what we have. In the past, that has been based on whatever numbers you all provide on your quarterly reports, which is why I said earlier that starting first quarter balance for the conference year, if for some reason that's not correct, please let us know, because it's just based on whatever the running total has been for the past years. So as an example, when we do the full report that goes into the quarterly conference booklet, as you'll see, it'll have the ministry listed here, and then their balance as of the last quarter, any additions within the quarter, the total available based on that, any amount spent in the quarter, and then your balance as of the end of that quarterly report period. So, sorry? Oh, I thought somebody said something. But that's how it's showed, and then it's listed for all of the ministries. So I just use an example so I don't put all the ministry data out there, but that's just how it's presented there. And that's usually from the reports that you all provide. So as I said, we make every attempt to make sure that the monthly reports are sent out at the end of the quarter before you have to submit your information so that you have the latest financial data, and that's our goal.
So is the first quarter information now for quarterly, is that based on the fourth quarter of last conference that you sort of
Yes.
build on that?
Yes.
So that, has that been the place that you've had talked to treasurers or people about discrepancies? Is that where it happens?
Yes. Because we just started sending it out in March.
Okay.
So it's kind of still like a catch-up period to reconcile, but yes. Any other questions? Okay. So now let's go into how everything matches up from your monthly report into your quarterly report. So as you can see on the financial summary portion of the quarterly report, it lists these categories here: the amount brought forward, the amount raised this quarter, subtotal, amount dispersed, and total. And as you'll see, that aligns with the categories that are listed in this summary spreadsheet that's used in the quarterly conference booklet. So, to break this down, in the spreadsheet that we'll be providing going forward, this section will be in the spreadsheets that you receive when you get your monthly reports. So you'll see the amount brought forward equates to your balance forward in this spreadsheet. The additions total equate to the amount raised this quarter, or the total income that was brought in from for your ministry from online donations or any funds that you turned in for special events, so forth and so on. The subtotal column is the same as subtotal. The amount dispersed, same here, amount dispersed. And then the total is going to be the total for that quarter, and it's the same. So ideally, all of these numbers should match when you're submitting your quarterly reports based on the information that we have. But again, if for some reason that information does not align, please let us know quickly so we can find out where the differences are and where the issues are so that we can correct them, to make sure that when we submit the information, what's listed in the summary sheet also matches what you all have on your individual reports. Does that make sense?
I have So you're saying we can continue to use this format to, for our quarterly conference report, but yours will look like that?
Yes.
Okay.
And so this is just to help you all to show what we're tracking for your ministry, and it should make,
It should be the same.
yeah, it should be the
Okay.
same as what you're tracking with your internal treasurer and what you all have.
Okay.
But in the case that there's a difference, that's why we want you all to let us know so that we can make sure that our numbers are accurate
Okay.
in addition to yours.
All right.
Because within all the same report, if we're submitting the quarterly conference booklet and we have a running total list at the front, but then on the ministry report it has a different number, it's not gonna look good, right? So we just wanna make sure it's all the same. Okay, so as I mentioned to a lot of folks that have asked, we can't necessarily guarantee some of the prior year data because we began to focus on this conference year going forward to make sure that everything is correct. We are still working on prior year data, but our goal then was to catch up and make sure that everything matched the bank statements. We didn't necessarily go down to the ministry level because, you know, we're trying to focus on making sure that everything's correct going forward. But we do plan to address that and clean up some of the past ministry data. But for the time being, we want to make sure that whatever balances you all have do jive with what we have. So that being said, I kind of talked about this a little earlier, but in the event that you're asking for a report randomly in the middle of the month, just be aware that the information we have is kind of limited, right? Because as you said, the Vanco monthly reports aren't given until the end of the month. So we're not going to know for sure everything that you've received through online donations until the end of the month, and we can reconcile that information because there are some instances where, you know, checks may bounce, online donations may not clear, credit cards may not go through, so things happen throughout the month before we're given that final report. So it's best to wait until you get the end of month report because that's going to be the most accurate information after we've reconciled it and made sure that all of that is addressed. So that being said, even if you do need, for some reason you have something going on and you just need a right now, hey, whatever you got, just give it to me, know that we're going to say, hey, this information has not been reconciled. So it can change by the time you get your monthly report. So just be aware of that. And then also, please try to give us some time to run the reports. So if you ask, you know, if you don't hear back from us within a day or two, then of course check back in with us. But, you know, it takes time. You know, we all got stuff going on. I work, other people work on the finance team. So, you know, we got to be able to sit down. You know, when you're dealing with numbers, you don't want to get stuff wrong. So you want to be able to sit down and pull up stuff side by side. Like when you ask me for stuff, I got to pull up Dropbox. I got to check the financial statement. I got to check the online donation. I got to check QuickBooks. We all have to do this when we're asked for this information. So just be cognizant of that. You know, I know the information sometimes may be needed right then and there, but we can give you a best guess. But if you want detailed information, it's going to take, you know, a little while for us to get through. All right. So then, last thing is for the budgets. Please use your internal meetings to start preparing your budgets well in advance. I recommend starting it around November, December timeframe so that you can do a draft in November, come back again, look at it in December, come back again, finalize it in January, clean up anything, get it adopted in February, and then provide it to us no later than March, because then that gives us time to roll it all up with everybody else's reports, and then we can have it ready when it's time to present it to the stewardship and finance. So please try to do that. We did send out a template for doing that, and thank you for those that used the template to submit your budgets. We use that when we're trying to adjust and make sure that we've spent what we want to spend or where we have room within the budget to do other things. But please keep in mind that if you do submit a budget and you see that you're approaching your budget or you see that you're approaching your balance, please be cognizant of that. We're trying to limit our spending to our budgeted items as best we can. So if you see that you're getting ready to approach your balance or approach your budget, please try to consider internal raising of funds or a fundraiser before requesting emergency assistance for funds so that we can try to stay within our budgeted amount to do other things we need to do for the church. So, that's it. Does anybody?
Can I make a statement about the budget? I just want to make a quick statement about the budget. When you do submit budgets and you're looking at your budgets, please make sure your income matches your expenditures. A number of the budgets we received this year, it had the activities they wanted to do, but they didn't include the income piece of it. So all the ministries should be working within the monies that they have, not exceeding it, not because then that is a drain on the overall church finances.
Did anyone have any just overall comments, any follow-up questions on anything that was presented? Concerns?
I'd just like to say this is absolutely tremendous in terms of having everybody on board and the level of understanding about what y'all have to go through. And you have 40 different entities. Even if you had a business, you wouldn't have this level of complexity. And so we appreciate all that you've done. Even this presentation, absolutely tremendous. And there's some things that some people, they didn't ask questions, they didn't understand, but they understand a lot better now. And to have those monthly reports that you give out really is going to help out persons quite a bit so they can make sure things are accurate. I would just like to lift up, if you could, talk about, occasionally there might be an organization that might need to make a credit card purchase. How are we handling that for persons who, you know, so if they go through their organization so they can understand, you know, there are persons in the church that have a credit card that can be used, but how do we do that?
We haven't necessarily come up with a formal process that I know of from the finance team's perspective. From what I understand, the ministries just go straight to the credit card holder that they know and request that purchase be made, and then they turn in the receipts to the card holder or to Sister Berry, and then at the end of the month when we get the statement, we go through charge by charge and make sure that there's a receipt for it and that it's associated with the ministry or a purpose, and then it gets categorized based on that. So once it is associated with the ministry, it's going to show up on their expenses as an expense.
Right. So one way is that someone in the ministry, they may buy it and they get reimbursed.
Yes, sir.
But occasionally, there's sometimes the ministry may need something in the churches, you know, use the credit card. Dwight, how have we been doing?
I think to go back to what we're anticipating, what we're trying to do,
Okay.
in the case of a voucher, there's a line on a voucher that says treasury balance. And what that does, and I think the treasurer now is a check for that. The treasurer is going to look at a voucher. This is the voucher. The treasurer is going to look at that when they do put that money, fill that line in with their treasury balance to see if they have money to afford or to allow that voucher to be exercised or initiated. That's for a voucher. For a credit card, I'm going to be doing for my credit card. Do you have money to cover this purchase before I do it? Which is a check, and everybody should be doing that. If you're making if you're writing a voucher, the treasurer is going to should be assuring that there's money to cover this disbursement. And for me, with a credit card, I need to ask whoever if I'm using my credit card to buy something for you, do you have money to cover that expenditure?
Anything else?
Well,
Yeah.
I just want to say one thing. I really appreciate the check, if I request a check, the process that you all use. I really, because I don't have to worry about the check is going to call in the office or coming down. You will send the email. Thank you. I really appreciate it.
Okay. Thank you. Anybody else?
I'd like to lift up on travel. The organizations, they do travel sometimes. There is an authorized travel form that you have to fill out on behalf of the church. So that means even if your organization is using your own money, you have to go to the church office and you have to fill out that form. The form has on there what those expenses are, has on there the hotel, has on their travel, whatever. You have to fill that out and provide the receipts upon return. So it's very important that you do that, because if you receive money from travel on the church, from the church, actually the IRS, there's certain things that we're required to keep track of. It's not something that you can just because it's your organization, you just can't do. So please, if you're traveling, even with your organization, you can't just give the person the money and just say, we have to see what those expenses are. I sign off, the wife signs off, and then when you come back, you have to sign that form. And occasionally, it's not, it has slipped by, but we're trying to keep that very tight. Y'all understand what I said?
You mean like if you just go to a lay convention or something, you're supposed to fill out a form?
If you travel, you stay overnight, or you
Yeah.
have some expenses, or you send somebody to a meeting that require, not you just go across the water or something like that. Not necessarily, but if you're staying overnight, you have certain expenses, the organization gives you money to travel, you need to fill out that form.
Oh, okay.
Can I just piggyback on?
Are they online?
Church office has those.
The church office has, and I don't know if
It's a form you can pull up online.
Okay,
It's not a fillable form, but you can pull it up online.
okay.
So is that for when you requesting money, or you from the church to pay for it? So like with the New York trip, would I have to do that?
Yes.
Yes, okay, that's need to know.
And just to piggyback on what Pastor said, for any event that you're having, if you know, I mean, most of us know ahead of time what events we're gonna plan for the year. Any event you know of and you've planned for it, plan to budget for it and plan to get that monies up front, as opposed to, because one of the challenges, and I'm telling you, my challenge, is that when people are reimbursed, this church has over 5,000 lines of data in any given year. And so when it comes tax season, we have to determine if people have been paid for service to the church or if they're being reimbursed. Because if you're being paid for a service and you've received over $600 in any given calendar year, we're supposed to issue a 1099 to you all. And so what we try to do is make certain that it was truly a reimbursement. But as much as if you're planning ahead of time and you're following the rules and you're filling out the proper paperwork, the less we have to reimburse an individual, that lessens the likelihood that we'll make a mistake and give you a 1099, because then that becomes income to you that you have to report on your taxes each year. And so we try to avoid that for our membership, especially because a lot of people will go out and spend the money and get reimbursed. But if you know the event is occurring and you know there's something that has to be done for that event, plan ahead of time and get the money through the church to the vendor or whatever, as opposed to spending your own money and getting reimbursed. Because it can result in tax implications to the members.
Merry Christmas.
I have a question about cash donations, and you might have gone over this already, but if, let's say we have a vendor, and we have cash donations coming in, are we able to utilize that to offset what we could pay out of our own budget?
When you say cash donations, you mean cash collected within your ministry?
Yes, cash collected.
Yes, you would collect it and then turn it into the church, and then that gets logged under your income. So then when it's time to pay that vendor, you're pulling from your own balance to pay it when the check is written from the church.
And if that vendor is sending money directly to the church, they just need to note that the donation is for your ministry. If they just send it in and they don't specify it's for your ministry, it's gonna go into the overall general fund. But if a vendor sends in money and they want to donate it specifically to your ministry, they just need to say that.
Does that answer your question?
Well, I'm just basically saying, if donations are received,
Right.
we have a vendor that has to get paid.
Yes.
We basically have to submit all of those donations first.
Yes.
And then we have to pay that vendor separately.
Yes.
In order, okay.
Yes.
I'm just confirming.
That's the best way to do it.
Yes.
So that the money is clearly seen through the church properly as income and then expensed out to the vendor.
I just want to, good evening, everybody. I just want to say one thing.
say it. You're spending the church's funds, or it's all the church belongs to the church. Consider this thought. Do we really need it? Is it something that we could use for a program that we used last year? Do we always have to go out and buy something new because it's a new year? We're spending a lot of money. And just my personal opinion, that we could need to rethink those items that we're purchasing for an event. We have a lot of things in the little, what's it called, the shed. Consider using what we have. Because a lot of things are happening, and that's all I want to say is that think twice. Do we really need it? Is it something else we can use that we already have? That's it. Let the church see it.
Amen.
I'm gonna have the last word, and I'm gonna speak on behalf of Sister Cox. She's here about every day writing checks or whatever, and it's just tough sometimes. You to decide I need a check tomorrow or I need a check tonight. So if you could try to anticipate as best you can, as early as you can, that would just make her job a lot easier. If you at least a week or so before, that would really. Is that good, Doc?
There's an approval process. I just can't write a check because you asked for it. Okay, I cannot write. Understand that unless it's an emergency, and it has to come from the pastor and maybe the wife. And most of the time, it's the pastor. So just consider the fact that there is a process that we all go through. There are checks and balances in giving out money. Right, Yolanda? And we check each other. We have questions for each other, so it's just not one person making that final decision.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's a voucher system. 5 people have to sign off on it. So that means that she's not going to write the check unless all people have signed off on it electronically. So it just takes a little while. Don't stress out about it, but it makes her job a lot easier.
Plan efficiently.
Well, thank you all again for coming.
Great job.
Again, if you all have questions, the 4 of us, myself, Sister Townsend, Sister Cox, and Dorian are the members of the finance team. And our email address is the email that you're receiving those monthly reports from. So if at any time we have access to that email box, we can check it and respond when we are able to. So please just send any comments or questions you have on those reports or about your ministry's finances in general, and we'll do our best to get you an answer. All right. Have a good evening.
I'm going to pray out.
Oh, we just want to pray out really quick, everyone. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Sister Cox, we're going to pray out real quick. Well, thank you.
All minds clear? Let us pray. Father God, once again, we thank you, for our health and strength, for being in our right minds, and for the love we have for our church family.
Oh, yeah.
God, as we travel on the highways and byways of life, God, we ask that you continue to protect us from all hurt, harm, and danger. And for those who are unable to attend, God, give them the reassurance that it's okay, and to get back with the finance team, because we'll answer any question you need. God, we ask you to continue to bless our pastor, welcome back, Pastor, and also to bless all the presidents and the treasurers and all of our ministries, because we're all on one accord. And we thank you, God, for allowing that to happen in Bethel AME Church. God, we ask that you continue to bless our families. This we ask in Jesus' name. Let the church say,
Amen.